This video is brought to you by Skillshare. In a previous video, I showed you how to fake drone shots using your phone. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to edit that footage to make it look even more drone-like. I'm going to be giving you tips that will take your average looking footage and turn it into something that looks much more smooth, cinematic, and professional. It's coming up. Hey everyone, Steve here from Learn Online Video, and today I'm going to be showing you how to edit fake drone footage. In a previous video, I walked you through the shoot step by step, and in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to edit all of that footage together into a sequence. So if you haven't seen that video yet, or you'd like to learn how to shoot fake drone shots, be sure to check it out. I will link it below. Now, I'm going to be editing everything using Final Cut Pro X today, but this tutorial is all about the tips and techniques, so just apply this exact same process to your own editing software. Now, before we jump into this tutorial, let me show you what all of this footage will look like when it's edited into a short 30-second sequence. Now, in front of me here, I have that exact same sequence on my timeline. Now, that entire sequence was only made up of 8 shots. So let's go through each shot and I'll show you exactly how it was done. Okay, so here we are. Here is that sequence on my timeline. I'm editing on a 1920 by 1080 24 frames per second timeline. Okay, so as you can see, we've got quite a lot going on here. We've got cinematic bars, we've got color grading, but look, let's just rewind the clock for a second and I'll show you how this entire sequence began. Okay, so right here I have 8 unedited raw clips straight from camera. I probably had about 20 minutes worth of footage from this shoot, so I've managed to edit that down to what I deemed to be the best clips, and I now have about a minute and a half's worth of footage on the timeline. I picked these clips based on how smooth the footage was, the framing, the composition, the way in which the camera moves. I've tried to create a nice mix of footage. I've also placed these clips in the order in which I would like them for my final sequence. Now, once I've got to this stage of the edit, this is where I start to introduce music. Now, I already had a track in mind for this. I wanted something big, something epic, something with a nice fast pace that I could edit to. Now, the track that I'm going to be using for this sequence is called Ragnarok by Edgar Hoop, and I got this from where I get 99% of my music, Epidemic Sound. If you'd like a free trial to Epidemic Sound, I will leave a link in the description below, but if you already have your track, then just use that. Now, one of the first things that you'll notice if I drag my music beneath this footage is that the track is much longer than the footage. So not only am I going to need to edit the footage, but I'm also going to need to edit the track. So it's also at this stage I really start paying close attention to the track and I start looking at the audio waves. As you can see here, we've got peaks, we've got troughs. Ultimately, I'm looking for a segment of this song that I could potentially use for my final sequence. Now, in this case, I couldn't find a segment of this track which was the duration that I was looking for my final sequence. So instead, I used parts of the track to create one final track. Now, if I just double click on this track, we can see that I've used the beginning of this track and the end of this track. I've put a cut right on this beat to hide the cut and make it feel much more seamless. And what I've ended up with is a track which is now less than 60 seconds long, but feels like a completely unedited track. Now, let me just zoom in and we'll hit play. And there you have it. I don't think many people would have noticed that there was an edited cut right in the middle of this track. I then made these 2 segments of the track a new compound clip, and what we now have is a track which is the exact duration that I'm looking for. It's less than 60 seconds long, and this puts me in a really strong position in terms of the edit. I now have a track which is the perfect duration for my sequence. I can edit to the beat of this track, and I can now end my sequence with the end of this song, and this really helps tie it all together and makes it feel much more professional. Okay, so let me just disable the track for now so it doesn't distract us, and let's zoom in and focus on shot number 1. Okay, here we go. Now, the first thing I notice is that this shot is a little wobbly. It doesn't look particularly drone-like. We've got the height of a drone, I guess, but it's definitely not smooth. So what can we do to improve this footage? How can we make it look more drone-like? Okay, so let's select our clip. Now the first thing I'm going to do to this clip is I'm going to slow it down. By slowing our footage down, it's going to reduce the shake and it's going to make it feel much smoother. Okay, and as you can see, we've now got a much smoother shot. It's still not perfect, but it's a heck of a lot better than what it was. Okay, but what else can we do to this clip to make it a bit smoother? Well, Final Cut comes with post-stabilization. So I'm going to select the clip and hit post-stabilization, and this is really going to help smooth out this footage. Okay, so we now have a shot that's been slowed down by 50% with post-stabilization added. Let's take a look. Okay, much better, much smoother, and much more drone-like with just 2 simple tweaks made in the edit. Now, without doubt, one of the best ways to improve the look of your footage is in the edit. This is where all the magic happens. You can make your footage look smoother, you can create a certain mood by adding music, you can color grade your footage to stylize it, you can use storytelling techniques, you can pace your video for a higher audience retention, but none of that is possible if you don't know how to properly use your editing software. And this is where the sponsor of today's video comes in, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creatives that literally has thousands of classes on topics including video editing, photography, filmmaking, design, and much, much more. It doesn't matter what software you're using, chances are Skillshare will have a class on it. Final Cut Pro, yes. Premiere Pro, yes. But wait, what if I'm using free editing software like DaVinci Resolve? Well, yes, Skillshare has a class on that as well. And the first 1,000 people to use the link in my description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. This is the perfect opportunity to brush up on your editing skills for free. When you know how to properly use your editing software, you can literally take average looking footage and turn it into something that looks much more interesting, engaging, that captures your audience's attention. You can learn a heck of a lot in a month, so take advantage of this. Also, when you know how to edit, it helps you shoot. You can now shoot for the edit, and this will make you way more efficient and save you a ton of time. So if you're a creative looking to learn, explore, and discover new things, then Skillshare really is the place to do it. So you've got nothing to lose. Use the link, take a class, soak up some knowledge, and get creative. Okay, moving on, clip number 2, let's take a look at the raw unedited footage. Okay, camera pulling back through the branches of this fallen tree. Shot again is a little bit wobbly, but we can fix that. Camera continues to pull back and rises up. Quite a long clip, I definitely want to shorten this, and in fact, what I'd quite like to do is reverse this clip so it starts high and then goes low. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to modify, retime, and reverse clip. I'm also going to add some post-stabilization to this clip. Now, reversing this footage is something that I quite like to do often because sometimes it can really improve the shot. If there's nothing in your shot to give the game away, then try experimenting with your footage. Try playing it forward, try playing it in reverse, and use the version which works best for you and the sequence that you're creating. Okay, let's take a quick look, and yes, here we go. So we've now got this clip playing in reverse, and as you can see, it's much smoother. Also, this shot is just too long for the sequence that I'm looking to create. I need to speed it up in some way, and a really good way of doing this is by adding a speed ramp. So here's what I'm going to do. I've already reversed the shot, but I'm now going to slow it down by 50%. This is just going to make it that much smoother. So I like to play it just for a second so the audience can get their bearings and establish the shot, and then go into the speed ramp. So with my clip selected, I'm going to hit Command-Shift-B. This will add a speed ramp. I'm then going to skim forward to where I would like this speed ramp to end, and again hit Command-Shift-B. I'm then going to increase this section of the clip by 3,000%. So this is going to be a really quick camera movement. Okay, so what we now have is a clip that's playing at 50% speed in reverse. It plays for a second, and then we go into a speed ramp. The shot then continues playing in reverse at 50% speed. Let's take a look. Excellent. I think by adding some music and some sound effects, this shot is really going to come to life. Okay, moving on, shot number 3, let's take a look. Camera pushing forward close to the ground. I like it. Camera lifts, rises up past the branch of this tree, and we continue pushing forward. I can see the gimbal in the bottom right-hand corner of the shot there, but not to worry because we're going to add some cinematic bars in the final sequence. Camera continues to push forward over the roof of this old ruin. But again, the thing that I just don't like about this shot is that the shot is just too long for the sequence that I'm trying to create. So we're going to need to speed this up. So I'm going to add a speed ramp to this shot at the point in which I think is the least interesting, which is just after we come past this branch. I'm going to speed it up from this point just before we get to the roof. Okay, let's take a look. Camera pushing forward nice and low to the ground. Camera rises up past the branch on this tree, and wait for it. There we go, speed ramp. And again, this footage is really going to come to life once we add all the music and the sound effects. Okay, moving on, shot number 4, let's take a look. Camera pushing forward from an elevated position, relatively smooth, not too bad. Camera moving down now and pushing through the window through to the other side of this old ruin. Now, I really like the idea of this shot being played in reverse. If we play it in real time, we can see the camera is moving towards this window, so it's not too much of a surprise when the camera goes through it. But if we start from inside this ruin and pull back, it's a nice surprise for the audience to see the camera pulling back through this window. Again, this shot is a little bit too long for the sequence that I'm looking to create, so I'm going to add a speed ramp. Let's take a look. Okay, camera starts from within the ruin. We pull back through the window and speed ramp to an elevated position. Okay, moving on. Okay, next shot is a simple shot, the camera just rising up. And actually, look, to be honest, I quite like the look of this shot the way it is. I don't think it really needs much doing to it, so I'm not gonna touch it. I'm just gonna leave this shot exactly as it is. Okay, so let's move on to shot number 6. Okay, let's take a look. Camera pushing forward nice and low through the grass, and camera lifts up into the branches of these trees. I really like this shot, but again, it is a little bit too long for the sequence that I'm trying to create, so we're going to add a speed ramp. I know I'm adding a lot of speed ramps to this sequence, but this really is just for demonstration purposes. You can use speed ramps as much or as little as you like. Just do what works best for you and the sequence that you're trying to create. Okay, camera pushing forward through the grass and up we go into the trees, and that speed ramp helps us get to that elevated position much quicker. Okay, moving on, shot number 7. Now the reason I've put shot number 7 here just before shot number 8, our final shot of the sequence, is that I want to try and link these two shots together. Okay, let's take a look. Camera pushing forward from an elevated position. It's a little bit wobbly and this shot could do with some leveling, but we can fix that in just a sec. Camera now pushing forward, and this is where we get an issue because we've got some serious overexposure in this shot, but then that takes us through to shot number 8. And this shot was actually filmed on the other side of that powder mill. So I'm gonna try and link these two shots together. Now, basically what I did with this shot here is I keyframed the framing of this shot. I leveled the shot slightly by adjusting the rotation, and then I tried to keep the powder mill roughly in the center of frame throughout this shot. Again, it's not perfect, but it's a lot better than the original clip. Now, to help with the pacing of the sequence, we're going to need to speed this clip up, so I'm going to add another speed ramp. Again, I'm going to play this clip just for a second or two and then add the speed ramp. Also, to fix this overexposed area of this shot, I'm just going to mask it out. So I've masked out a small square-shaped mask, and then beneath this clip, I've put clip number 8. So we can now see through clip number 7 to clip number 8. This not only hides that overexposed area of shot number 7, but it also helps take us to shot number 8 much more seamlessly. Okay, so with a couple more edits and adjustments of speed, what I've now ended up with is ultimately a first draft of this sequence. We now have 8 clips all edited. We've adjusted some of the speed of these clips. We've helped smooth the footage out, and all of this footage ends perfectly with the end of this song. Now, we could potentially just leave it there and be done with it, but I always like to add a few extra layers of interest to these types of edits, and without doubt, sound effects are really going to help bring this to life, as well as some color grading and cinematic bars. So here is that sequence with just the footage and the music, but now let me show you this sequence with all the finishing touches. Okay, here is that final sequence. Now let me just highlight each of these individual elements and show you exactly what each one is doing. Okay, so all these elements here that I've just highlighted, these are all the sound effects for this sequence. And what you'll notice is that every time there's a speed ramp in this sequence, I've added a whoosh sound effect. A speed ramp and a whoosh sound effect kind of go hand in hand. You, of course, don't need to add whoosh sound effects to your speed ramps, but it just adds another layer of interest. It helps keep your audience engaged, and it can really help bring your sequence to life. Now, this layer here are my cinematic bars. This is just a transparent layer that I've laid over the top of this entire sequence to help give it a much more cinematic feel. I'll leave a link to a free download of some cinematic bars in the description below. Download that, use it as you please. Now, what you probably noticed about these cinematic bars was that they animated in, and this was really quite simple. I scaled up the cinematic bars, I added a keyframe, and then I scaled them down and added another keyframe. Okay, let's just talk about the color grade and the way in which this wipes on. Again, this is relatively straightforward. I've got my opening shot here, which I duplicated and put one on top of another. The layer underneath is ungraded. The layer on top is graded, and then what I've done is I've added this wipe transition between the two clips so that when that first clip plays, the color grade wipes on. Now, in terms of the color grade, I used one of my own LUTs to color grade this footage. This is from my Smartphone LUT Pack. I will leave a link to that in the description below. I won't go into too much detail about how I color graded this sequence because I have an entire video dedicated to that. Again, I will link that in the description below. I used an adjustment layer to color grade this footage. Adjustment layers do not come with Final Cut Pro X, but I have a free download, which I will leave in the description below. There's going to be a lot of links down there. Now, another thing that you may or may not have noticed in that final sequence is that whenever there was a speed ramp, there was kind of a blurry effect that was added to that speed ramp section of the shot. And that was caused by these here. These are motion blur overlays or motion blur titles. Now, these motion blur overlays are great when it comes to speed ramping because it can give your shot an extra sense of realism, especially when it comes to fast camera movement. Now, let me just show you an example of a speed ramp without and then with the motion blur effect added. Okay, here is a speed ramp without motion blur added. Not bad, pretty good, looks okay. But now here is a speed ramp with motion blur added. And zooms forward. Did you see that? Let's just go through this frame by frame so you can see what's happening here. As we go forward, see that? As the speed ramp starts, this blurry effect has now been added to the footage. This motion blur effect really helps emphasize that camera movement. Motion blur titles and overlays, great for adding to speed ramps. Unfortunately, they do not come with Final Cut Pro X, and I don't have a free download to those, but just keep them in mind the next time you're speed ramping. If you can get your hands on some motion blur titles or overlays, be sure to use them because they can make all the difference to your footage. So look, I hope you found this video useful. Be sure to check out Skillshare using the link below. Take a free class, learn some extra editing skills and get creative. If you found this video useful, do let me know by giving it the old thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more content like this, learn more about video production, you can do that by watching one of my other videos just over there. But that's it from me. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.